SJ, welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Stone Go, Gary 5 Jaho Jeff Ghettos, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedget, Woodskits. Welcome to our program here on this chilly Oatmulgee morning here on the brew. Sitting in here with me this morning is my boss, Angel Ellis. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you making some time for me here.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
We are going to be speaking with her about how our department is doing, not just to kind of blow our own horn, but give our listeners an idea of where we're going and kind of response we're getting and the kinds of things that we have on our horizons. And in the second portion of our program, we've got a real change of pace. We have another submission by our good buddy Jared Moore from his Live Wire program. He did a nice discussion with rap artist Sten Joddi, who's been showing up around here lately. So we'll listen to that discussion and make a real change in what we do. But first of all, thank you once again, Angel, for coming in. We appreciate you making a little time for us and kind of venturing out of the administrative end of our business.
My pleasure. I'm telling you, the paperwork and administrative side gets a little bit mundane after a while, and you kind of got to get back to the roots and come back to the stuff that you used to do. You know, I miss it.
Yeah. I have had a few sojourns in the administrative end of our business in various places and absolutely hated it.
You know, I've found that I'm not like the most enthusiastic administrative person. I had much more passion for producing content than I do administrative things. It's been a real change of pace that I'm still adjusting to, really. So.
Yeah, not having to go to meetings and try and stay awake.
It's kind of harder to gauge your effectiveness. So when I was a reporter, I had a deadline, and I knew that I was being effective when I got my stories in by deadline. Now that you're in an administrative position, you have projects, and you try to move them through this bureaucratic process, and they move so slowly that you don't get that feedback as often, so you don't feel as effective as you did when you were producing content on a tighter deadline and getting things done.
Let's talk about effectiveness here now. We, I think, are a different identity, a different animal than this department has been in the past. You know, we're still producing the same products, but I think there is a more intense effort to do it. Better, I would definitely say better quality, but how would you judge how we're doing? What's the state of the art as far as Mvskoke Media?
I think that Mvskoke Media is on this really great trajectory right now. We've just gone through our second round of budgets. It was under my administration anyway. Our second round of budgets since our constitutional free press amendment, and this is the first budget in 10 years that we asked for an increase in our budget, and we made it through the committee. You know, so that process is a little bit lengthy. You go from your board to the chief to the council committee, and so now we're in the process of seeing if we make, if the overall budget gets passed by council. It'll be the first time we've had an increase in our budget, and this last year for us has been also about exploring other financial options that don't burden the nation. So we've gotten a couple of grants in the last year, and one of those we just found out about last week is a very significant, it's in the $100,000 range, and that grant is going to purchase a lot of much needed equipment for our department. So I feel like that's a really great place to make progress, right? We want to serve the citizens' communication needs. We want to offset the burden that it is to the nation's coffers, and we want to do it in a way that, you know, reflects that our community and what they want. So it's a big job, but we're making progress on it. It's not something that you can change. You know, you change a policy one day, but that doesn't change your implementation, right? There's things that you have to do, and they take time to form policy, to form the foundation, because that's what we're doing here is really forming the foundation of a constitutionally protected free press, and we just don't have any other models out there to look to exactly. And even the models that we do have, we have to kind of cater to our community's needs. So that's a big job, and I think to make small progress is something I have to kind of remind myself, okay, getting some increased budget funding, getting a grant, that's things that you have to kind of toot your own horn about, or at least cheer yourself on for doing it, because it's a small thing, but in the big picture, but it's important.
Well, you mentioned there, I think one of the more significant developments in our recent history, and that's the freedom of the press. That was approved for the tribal constitution, almost a 3-to-1 measure by our citizens.
Yeah,
Who told us this is what they want. We want a press that can do its job without anything hanging over our heads, a threat to our budgets or personnel or things like that, or the content that we put out. And we put out I think, higher quality product. I'm not just blowing our horn here, but I've been in the business for over 40 years, and I've seen native journalism evolve from its infancy to now to the point where we can respectfully do what we feel is the correct job, so to speak, which is also a huge responsibility. But I don't know, what do you feel like the change has been since that constitutional change?
I feel like it's really liberated a lot of our hindrances that we had before. Before we became a constitutionally protected free press, before those 76.25% of citizens went to the polls and chose and made their voices, understood that they thought a free press is an asset to sovereignty. Before that happened, there were pressures, and there were times when we questioned whether or not doing a story would cause problems later on down the road when we're kind of asking for funding, and it did. There were times in our history as Mvskoke Media has emerged that we were doing hard stories and people didn't like it, and it made an impact, and our protections were pulled back. Well, now that we have these 76.25% of the citizens who vote come and support us, it's really hard for an elected official to make their will more important than the people's will. And so I feel like we've had a better time of it. And funding wise is always going to kind of be tricky, because every one of the elected officials want to be stewards of the nation's money. They want to spend in the right way. We just have to be consistent with our process, and we have to demonstrate the need before we go asking for money all willy-nilly. And I think that we've done a pretty good job doing that since we've kind of asked for our first increase in a long time. It was a very modest one. $90,119 is the first increase we've ever had in like many years. So it's not like we were asking for millions or anything like that in addition to what we already receive. It was just a modest increase, and we kind of demonstrated the need, and that increase is actually going to fund a position that will help us generate more revenue.
Right. We're looking to bolster the efforts towards self-sufficiency.
Right.
I don't know that we will reach it, and I can't recall really that any native journalism project enterprise has ever reached it, nowhere in the nation. But along with this new, this enhanced ability to cover our nation comes a huge responsibility. I remember, not too long ago, there were people still saying that politicians could affect what we do, the stories we cover or the angles we took on it. But, and that just frustrated the heck out of me. I just hated hearing that. I said, no, that is not the case, and I think our people have the integrity not to fall into those traps. Now, that responsibility, how would you define it, and how are we carrying it out?
Oh my gosh, I really feel like Mvskoke Media, once that vote was cast, Mvskoke Media became the people's paper, right? The people's media department. And I almost see myself as having 90 something thousand bosses out in the world, right? Like, this is our community, and this is the only media group that will serve specifically their needs. So if they come to us with a specific need and they communicate it to us, they have a valid interest, they have something that they need done, that they think is a story we need to do, I think we are obligated to fulfill that need, because no one else in the world is dedicated strictly to their communication needs. And this department serves a huge role in that. And that is, as you said, an enormous responsibility, because when you think about journalism as an industry, the big part of it is, the accuracy, the information is truthful, it doesn't cause harm, all those tenets and ethics that we follow from the journalism standpoint. But then you have to look at it as a market as well. And that's very, very hard to conceptualize for some people, because they don't understand a news market and how that funding works, and how we're not the only media company in this news market either. It's highly competitive. And even those media outlets that don't have funding from the nation, they struggle with the market as well. They struggle finding the funding. And so we're working in a lot of ways to kind of help bring resolution to that. This is the first year that we've ever brought broadcasts of the state elections debates, and we're doing that with collaboration. Instead of paying someone on our staff to go and do this, we're working with the people who have the staff in place, and they're sharing that information to our audience too, and we're helping shape the questions that are asked. So our audience gets representation in the event, and they get to see the outcomes. And that's something that I'm really proud of, because the collaboration is probably going to be the thing that keeps journalism going, and as we struggle for money.
One of the critical elements of, I think, being successful like this is the people who are employed to do it.
Right.
Now, we've got I think, well, compared to me, that we've got a fairly young, enthusiastic staff. Morgan and Kaylee and Brandon are, I don't know, relatively new to our end of the business, specifically tribal news, but I think they're doing a marvelous job. I don't mind patting them on the back for what they've accomplished, and they brought in awards, and I think produced a product that our people are responding to. So how would you size up our young, useful, enthusiastic people there?
I think it's the most refreshing thing personally for me to work with those guys, to be able to piggyback on that young, vibrant energy that they bring. And every single one of our news staff have this passion to tell Mvskoke stories. They have a varied background. If you look at the three core reporters that we have, their background is very different. One of them has a master's degree. He's a few years older than my own son, and he's hungry to learn and understand. We've sent him to 2 trainings so far, and he has just gone out in the world and really just taken advantage of every opportunity. And then we have a young lady who is, a veteran and who served in the military. And then we have a young lady who's local, and she, is connected locally and has many relatives who have had legacies in our nation. And these perspectives are wonderful, and they're diverse, and it gives our overall package a really interesting feel, because when you have young people who are telling stories, they're also learning. That's kind of the thing that every one of us are as a journalist. One of the things I used to joke about was that, I really just never wanted to quit learning, and that's why I did journalism, because you get to learn so many things, right? You just get to be a nerd and talk to people and learn about their lives and tell their stories. So that
Paid for being nosy.
Yeah, you get paid to be nosy. And so these kids that we have on staff, I keep calling them kids, and I shouldn't.
We can't.
Yeah, they're very, very good at that. They connect with people, and they are very empathetic. And I think that we see the effort in our coverage. It makes it much, much better. And when you have those young people on staff, you invest in them, right? It's the most devastating thing that ever happened to Mvskoke Media was after that repeal, 70 years of experience walked out of our doors. And you just cannot recover from that as an organization, no matter what your business is. When you lose 70 years of experience in a short amount of time, it's very hard to recover. And so I'm very pleased that we have such enthusiastic, dedicated, and energetic folks who want to do this work.
And I'm glad this old guy's still around.
Right. We
employed.
have to. Oh my gosh, if we didn't have you for guidance, like what would our newsroom look like? I remember when you came on staff and when you interviewed Gary, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I want to learn from this guy and I want to hear all of his stories. You know, that's how I thought of it. So, yeah, we're in a really good spot. And our folks are doing wonderful stuff. Not just the news team. We've got graphic designers.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Yes.
They are pumping out these amazing designs. I've never seen the kind of. It's so fun to walk around at festival and see the shirts that we sell, and people are excited for those.
And wearing them.
And wearing them, yeah. And it's kind of funny. I don't even have to like buy clothes from any other store anymore. I have a drawer full. Every time we come out with a new design, I spend half my paycheck on it because I just love getting every color and every design that comes out and representing that. I've never found anything else like it where I could, you know, be showing off my Mvskoke gear all the time and who I am, and it represents us. So. Well,
it gives us, obviously revenue.
Yes.
I mean, the most we've ever made in an effort like this, I think, in our history. But, people accepting it and looking for it. And, sales that we put on are quite busy, and they sell
are. Yeah, our
clear those shelves.
Black Friday sale did $5,000.
Holy mackerel.
Like, in the first part of the day. It was crazy. And I think that's really indicative of the effort and passion that Chelsea and the creative team have for, producing something that unites us in identity, right? We can,
right.
And it supports our department. This is the highest revenue we've ever done off of our market apparel in the last year or so, and we've never had the opportunity to have all three of our locations open at the same time because it's either been COVID or we don't have enough stock or something like that can happen. But now that we're getting ready to open up that Okima store sometime next month, and it's going to be interesting to see that revenue and how it continues to grow because it's doing well.
Well, let me shift gears here in doing what we do. The biggest stories we've covered, and I think a growing presence of Mvskoke Media, not only statewide but on a national scene too.
Yeah, it's really kind of strange to see that Mvskoke Media has made a little bit of a dip into the national scene. A documentary just got accepted into Sundance called Bad Press, and it follows the story of free press in the Mvskoke Nation. And I can't wait to see it. It's going to premiere at Sundance on January 22nd. And that's made kind of a really big dip in the wave. And since the pool's kind of like, oh my gosh. And I've never had so many major news outlets come to me for advice. Like they pick up the phone and they say things like, how do I tell this story in a good way that respects the person and the subject matter? And I'm like, wow, that's amazing, because we don't see that often. And it's real indicative of the overall climate in media in general. People are interested in the indigenous stories, and thank goodness many of them are becoming interested in doing them the right way.
Well, I think we've, for those who pay attention, we've seen that growth locally. Like the major network affiliates here are showing up on the stories that affect Native American, and it's not just the old sitting ducks that, like the drunks or the dances kind of thing that we've seen in the past there. And not just gambling, but gambling I think had a major effect. I mean, money talks. And
right.
Let's get it. But it's interesting that, I've been out covering stories that are important to us, but kind of have to elbow aside one of the TV reporters to make sure that I get in there. But to see that they are there and producing a much higher quality product about Oklahoma's native people.
Right, and there's been a couple of initiatives going on, and I've kind of helped work with them in small ways. I'm not the people who drives that initiative, but like Oklahoma Media Center, I sit on their board, and they took the time to hold trainings where they asked me and other Native journalists to come in and show the mainstream news folks what's the best way to cover the McGirt story in context. Now, did everything we taught everyone really hit home? I don't know, but we did actually, with Oklahoma Media Center and the Native American journalists, they did an audit of those stories, and they looked for bias, and they identified some, but they also identified that when we were doing trainings, it helped move the needle. We made an impact. And so that's kind of important to measure in the overall, newscape, is how are the reporters and the news editors treating Native topics. What I'm still hearing is a major problem in mainstream news is getting the higher level approval to do a Native story. But now it seems like once you get the approval, they kind of don't try to steer that stereotypical image as much. We have repeat offenders who are doing it all the time, right? And I troll them on Facebook or whatever, but the people who want to try are making progress, and that makes me feel encouraged by the work we're doing. And a lot of times, Gary, you know this, it happens when you're just on the sidelines in the field and the reporters are just asking you questions, right? Like the first level of advocacy we have is our Indigenous news producing staff who are out there mingling with other reporters, because they show up like to our nation and they come, to our court, and they don't know how the process works, and so they automatically make assumptions. And I spent time, and I'm not even a content producer anymore, but I recently spent time out there talking to people, just trying to be a little bit of a news ambassador to help them understand, so that I didn't have to read harmful headlines, about my own community, because that hurts.
Well, I've seen that kind of thing happening, and have experienced it, and I'm just delighted to see perhaps our guidance show up in other people's work, and someone focusing on what the real story is rather than just the and low-hanging fruit.
This last election season that our nation went through for the nation's elections, other news outlets like Non-Doc were specifically just sharing our coverage of it. Rather than have to wade out and learn a whole new political landscape, they just formed a partnership with us and said, hey, can we run your candidate profiles so that the Mvskoke folks who might live in Oklahoma City get this information too? And we said, absolutely, yes, let's do this. Let's reach our audience as far and wide as they go. And I am of the mindset that, if they're giving us credit for the work, let's share it as far and wide as we can and expose our work to.
That much needed educational process is taking place.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, in the past year that we've been working under this new banner, what do you think were the big stories that Mvskoke Media has covered, both here and radio, TV, and in our newspaper?
Oh my gosh, this is like a hard one for me, because I feel like I got pulled out of the newsroom, halfway in, halfway out, and I don't really always, really, some of the bigger stories that we've covered. Oh gosh, I'm trying to now I'm stumped. I don't even know where to start. I feel like.
Well, let me toss in and blow my own horn here. One of the things I've tried to do with this program is get it out of the studio, and not just talking heads. And whether it's going to Council Oak or the governor's fake forum, or Civil War reenactment, or I got tackled by Paul.
Oh my gosh, the McGirt forum was a huge one. To bring that kind of coverage, and that was just a really exciting story took my daughter to that one with me.
Mhm.
And,
I
you know,
remember.
now she thinks I'm some kind of like, you know, hardcore, like, you know, major news person because of that whole scene. She was really interested in it because what you saw in that event was Native people occupied a space, and they did it in the most polite and respectful way they could, having not been invited,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they also, we also saw that somebody who was not Native acted like a complete tool, you know, and did some really horrible things. And it was kind of refreshing to sit back as the Native in the room and be like, yeah, see, we aren't the problem here. And that story kind of, I feel like being in that environment and seeing that story come out and the difference in coverage, that's one of the examples I use when I teach people how to do better journalism on Indian country. I'm like, look at what we produced on this and look at what someone else produced on this, and it's a completely different perspective.
I think, not to pick on him, but I think the Friedman story actually exemplified some of that. Some people went with the racial profile kind of thing, that,
Right.
and missed the point, I think. And then others, you know, actually spent some time and research and came up with a pretty decent coverage.
Yeah. And that story, Braden did that story, and I'm telling you, like, he's kind of fresh to the nation, and for him to do as good of a job as he did covering that, it's really spectacular. I couldn't have done a story like that when I was like in my first year working for the tribe. My mind would have just been like, oh my God, I don't know, I can't even wrap my head around all of that. He did an exemplary work.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Spit it out.
Yeah, it was just perfect. You didn't get any sense one way or the other if he was for it or against it. You didn't get a sense one way or the other who was right or wrong. It was just, here is a case, and it's going through our courts, and one side feels this way, and the other side feels this way. There it is. And I'm really proud of the work that we're doing in those sense. And then our live wires are kind of cool. Like, Jared's doing some really neat stuff, getting audience feedback and answering questions. Like, that's an element of our coverage that I really feel like is important to get the audience engagement. We need to know what our audience wants to know, and how do you do that without having something live and then taking their questions from the audience chat. It engages the audience with the subject, and that's a very important element of the news relationship with your audience, and I'm pretty proud of that one. I'm also proud of the fact that we're doing coverage of amazing Muskogee people all over the country, right? Like, that's incredible. Whether it's a lady who's writing operas, or it's a kid who's doing race cars somewhere, like, we're kind of becoming this platform that's bridging all these Muskogee stories into the same place, and I'm really proud of our archives. I always tell the news staff, like, think of this week, think of this day as the snapshot, and what does somebody 70 years from now need to see? What will they look at when they see the picture?
And I'm glad that you know, we're, with total respect, being able to share our culture too. You know, whether it's you know, language,
Right.
or people's perspective on religion and things like that, and other ceremonial kind of things, without stepping on anyone's toes.
Right.
That's part of our educational process also. Where do you think we're going now in the next, in 2023?
In 2023, I think that we're going to do a lot of we're gonna purchase a lot of equipment because we actually got the
Yay.
grant money. Yeah, we got grant money, and we've gotten our budget increase, and we're gonna purchase a lot of equipment. Some of us are working on computers that I worked on in 2011. I'm not even kidding. Like, some of our gear is that old. So we're going to buy a lot of stuff for our news reporters to use, because we've kind of been patching ourselves through, many of them using their own machines, their own software, which is unheard of and very bad. Don't want to have that problem. You should supply a person with what they need to do their jobs, but these are dedicated people who are going to do their job regardless. You know, that's what I love about working for Mvskoke Media. Every single person on staff has such a passion that they do what it takes. But now we get to move into this phase where we get to provide for them the tools necessary to do their jobs. And I'm going to be I can just feel it. I get chills thinking about it. What happens when you give people the tools they need to do their jobs? The level of work goes really great. We're already winning awards. what are we going to do next?
Yeah, we've got a few. I'm proud to say I've added a few to my wall.
Yeah, Lifetime Achievement Award.
Oh, thank you. Now, last question, we'll get out of here. How do we encourage our people to get in touch with us? How do they reach us with story ideas or tips?
Yeah, info@Mvskoke Media. If you have a tip for news, send it to info@Mvskoke Media. Or if you look on our website, all of our reporters have their email addresses on there. Reach out to us. You can call our department too, 918-732-7720, and we happily take news tips over the phone.
Now, I want to caution that there's no guarantee that we will cover a story that comes in.
Yeah, and sometimes we get news tips on things that we can't really work with, and it's not because we're afraid to do it, because that's been alleviated. It's just we have to have all the pieces to make it fit, to make the story clear. And if we don't get clear information and clear documentation, then we won't proceed forward. We don't ever want to be in the position where we're putting hearsay out in the world.
Right, and that's our next. Okay, well, thank you so much, Angel Ellis. We appreciate you taking time to chat with me about our department, which we're very proud of. We're going to take a short pause here, and then we're going to listen to some hip-hop stuff from Sten Joddi.
Greasy for Everett.
Oh, yes. Stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio, here on The Brew.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
All right, we're going to venture into a musical avenue that we generally have not touched much on Mvskoke Radio. Mvskoke musician, artist, poet, whatever else he's doing, has been getting some notice and popped up around here a few times. Sten Joddi. So, do you know anything about him?
I know he designs clothing lines too.
Okay.
So, and he wears a really cool beaded medallion.
All right. Well, let's listen to what he does as a musician.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Livewire. I'm your host, Jared Moore, and Livewire is the program where we take your questions from the chat. Today's guest, he is a visual artist, he's a tattoo artist, he's a rapper, he's an actor, he's a man of so many talents. He has a stage name of Sten Joddi. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sten Joddi.
Blessings. How you doing out there, man? How's it going in Oklahoma?
It's going. You know how it is down here on the reservation. So, you know, before we get too deep, and you'll have to forgive me because I wanted to get this out of the way. For people who don't know the Mvskoke language, right? Could you kind of give some background on your stage name? What does it mean? What is it?
You know, in the Mvskoke language, we have Stajadis. Stajadi is native people. And so I felt like I wanted to represent not only indigenous people with a name that represents not only myself, indigenous people, but also the tribe and our language. And when coming up with that name, I didn't think when not that I came up with that name, but when I decided to use that as what I wanted to be called at that point, I was really getting in tune with the culture and our tribal ways. I was starting to re-educate myself, a lot of things. So yeah, it meant a lot to me, and I wear it with pride, and I wear it with honor, and I wear it with humility and humbleness. And I know that it carries a lot of weight. So I try to live my life in that good way, man. So
Absolutely.
definitely wanted to represent our people with that name, man.
Awesome. So, and I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, just pop them into the YouTube chat and we'll try to get them asked. So, people are seeing you on FX Reservation Dogs. You're kind of blowing up right now. You also were awarded from Native American Music Awards Male Artist of the Year and Best Hip Hop Recording. What was that like? You went to the ceremony and everything, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So, we took off Thursday, a couple of Thursdays ago, and I had gotten asked. So previously years, I've won the best hip hop album of the year before in 2017 at the Native American Music Awards, and then I was a part of a collaborative song that won best song that year as well. And so in 2018, I won best dance song at the Native American Music Awards, and then I always wanted to perform there, and we've been there a few times, and so I noticed that Mike Bone performed there the first year we went in 2017, and I just felt like I wanted to represent not only hip hop in the genre that I am in, but I wanted to represent our tribe, and I wanted to perform. And it took many years of me asking and like, when could that happen? And then COVID hit, and so like the music that I got the awards for this year was actually like a year behind in submissions.
I see.
When that was submitted, that was 2019. But the album is still amazing, and the tracks that are on it and the people that are a part of it is insane. And when we got there, we got snowed in Buffalo, man. And it was 7 feet of snow.
Whoa!
I was like, oh, I did not know, what I was in for. You know what I mean?
What was the hospitality like?
Lakes,
yeah,
being on those Great Lakes, those natives are used to it up there.
yeah. I bet they had a plan for everything. They're like, "What's your problem?"
Yeah. Like, so, trying to keep me here, man.
So, how did you get started in music? Is this something that's been a passion from when you were little, or is like suddenly you're like, I got to do something, or like, what's the story?
Yeah, so I grew up in Glenpool, and I ran around Tulsa and Okmulgee and Sapulpa my whole young life, and hip hop was definitely a huge influence on me, humongous. As a native kid coming up in Glenpool and Tulsa and Okmulgee and all these surrounding areas, in the 90s, as we all know, and before even to this generation now, before this generation, we didn't have any representation.
Right.
On TV, in movies, none of these things that, my kids are, privileged to have because of amazing natives that push through to create that lane for us to walk in,
Yeah.
And so coming up, back to that, just coming up, man, like I didn't really have anything to relate to as far as musical wise or anything other than the rap and hip hop culture,
right.
The black culture, the black movies, movies like Boys in the Hood, not because they were black or because they were in the hood, but because they were just four friends trying to survive the world they lived in.
Yeah.
And I could relate to that so much that, and also like, the music, it told a story. So that was something I could relate to as well. The stories in hip hop, the struggles in hip hop were definitely something I could relate to in my everyday life. You know.
And the culture too with hip hop is kind of like open source, where it's like anybody can get into it. You know, like you can get into it. They're not like saying you can't do it because you're an Indian or something like that. You know.
Right, and you're gonna get those you're gonna get situations where not only your friends just clown you, like you're not that good, man. You know, that gives you that push to become better. And it started when I was about 13 or 14. I started really like writing and freestyling my own music. I kind of started tattooing around the same time. Drawing was always something I did. These two things, music and art in that other form of, drawing and stuff, was something that was always, the creator always was trying to push me towards throughout my life. And sometimes, I'm listening and I'm trying to do tattoos. Again, coming up in Oklahoma in the 90s, tattoos were really not something that a teacher was going to tell a 14-year-old is a viable career choice,
Did you when you were tattooing at that time, did you ever make the tattoo pin out of like the ballpoint pen and the guitar string with the little electric motor?
So I started with stick poking, right? Like
okay,
right around the end of the needle, and you just kind of poke your way around stuff. So that's what I started doing. I didn't know that you could put a gun together and stuff. Until later on in my life, when, of course, I went down the wrong roads and I found myself in county jails and locked up in the system. I'm here to say those things too, that I've fell hard. I've been to jail. I've been addicted to drugs, and I'm still a recovering alcoholic every single day. It's sometimes I fall off, sometimes I get back on, but I try to live a good life, and I try to continue that healthy mentality and lifestyle. But yeah, I mean, tattoos and music has always been something that literally saved my life. In
Absolutely.
Times where I found myself homeless, I found myself hungry. Tattoos have saved my life. Music has given me a way to tell my story as well, and I'm thankful and grateful for it.
I think there's a time too, like my experience with talking to natives that are like, moving up in the art world or in artistic endeavors, right? There's like a period where you have this realization, it's like that you can do it, like even though that there's no role models to look up to, like you were talking about, you're like, you know what, it is possible, like, and normally that's like some type of a situation that you're in. Was there a moment like that for you?
Well, it was always me trying to prove to myself, to my mom, the people that said I couldn't. I kind of used that energy, right?
Right.
So for me, it was always the doubters. Your mom, she's always going to tell you that you can do it.
Right, absolutely.
No matter what.
Yeah.
So like, for my mom and people that love me, they're going to get behind you. But when you don't have those people, sometimes you got to find energy to keep going in other ways, right?
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
Again, my music is full of struggle and things that I have overcome. Like I said, homelessness and drug addiction and alcohol and all those things, and even anger issues and problems that I had with myself, mentality and mental health. All these things that I've had to fight through to be where I'm at now, to be a better father and a better husband, a better friend, and a better person. And I'm learning every day. Like, I'm not perfect, and I mess up, and so I'm just trying to be the best me I can be each and every single day. You know what I mean? And I welcome criticisms and all those things now without feeling like I'm being judged or something, right?
Right,
so like
right.
Now, at this point, it's kind of like I had more doubts in myself, and with the drive of people like my wife and like I said, the memory of my mom. I lost my mom in 2017, but her energy still is here with me. So
right.
I just keep on pushing, man, and each person and each individual is going to have to find those things that you have to find, that energy that's going to help you push through, and whatever that may be, you need to find that for yourself and really look into self for happiness, because I thought other things were going to make me happy,
right.
And they didn't, and I had to find that happiness within myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I could be I could be the best person I can be every day, and just continue to be better.
We've had a couple of questions or comments in our chat, and I just was going to run them by you real quick. And you kind of answered this earlier, but T.Y. Prohl says, how does tattooing relate in terms of cultural and artistic expression?
For me, tattooing was something that I didn't really know was a real cultural significance at the time. It was just something that when I was a youngster, man, it was just like, it was a little bit of, I used to like tag and do stuff like that, like graffiti arts. And so a lot of that, it was me just kind of pushing those boundaries of being a little as we say on the show, the little you know what I mean?
Right.
And so at the time, it wasn't very significant to me. It was just something I was doing. But as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more in depth in my craft, it's definitely a individual person-based situation sometimes. And tattoos mean a lot to me. It tells my story. It's like my music. So they're just kind of wrapped in together for me. And then when I create tattoos for people, it's on an individual basis, and how I approach each person and each piece of art. But I look at it like this: every tattoo I do is indigenous because I'm doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And how do you take clients on that, or do you do clients? Is this something where you only do it if you have a personal relationship with the person? Do you do it as an exchange, or?
No, man. So I opened up. I've been tattooing as a licensed tattoo artist in the state of Iowa for probably close to 17 years, 16, 17 years now. Okay. I've opened my shop going on 6 years. I opened my own shop. I was apprenticed and I worked for a great artist, Don Merle, here in North Iowa, and he pretty much gave me my opportunity after. I was working at McDonald's and stuff, man. Like, that's what I was working at McDonald's, doing tattoos on the side and trying to find studio time so I could make music. And to stay out of the street life and to stay out of the bad decisions and out of jail. And I started to really try to change my life in that aspect. And then that's when he seen some of the work I was doing around town was showing up at his tattoo shop. And so he was like, hey, man, tell that kid to come in here and talk to me.
Oh, wow.
So I met him, and he gave me an opportunity to be a legit tattoo artist. And 16 years later, I own my own shop, and, it's incorporated with a recording studio. So I have my tattoo shop and recording studio in the same building. Yeah, man. I mean, it's been a struggle, but I'm here, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have people on staff that want they wanted me to ask you how they can get you to do a tattoo on them. So that's all. I'll tell them they gotta get a plane ticket to Iowa. Are you
the best way?
Are you ever at the shop though? Like you have to be going on tour and doing stuff like going out to shoot. Like when are you going to be there?
lately, I have been moving around this year a lot. But I try. So a lot of people have this idea that you have to tour in a way of being away from your family and going away for 90 days to 120 days of nonstop, every club, every bar, every.
Right.
And when I started doing this, I manifested this in my mind, and I said I don't want to do that type of tour because I want to be able to bring my family. I want to be able to.
Yeah.
So unless they have like a tour bus for my family, then, you know.
Right.
In my mind, I said, why can't I just book shows, go to that one, do that, come back home, hang out with family,
right,
book another show, go and do that, come back home, hang out with family, go do another show. You see?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that way I'm not always on the road, and I'm at home at, between, 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Sometimes it's only a week I'm home, but still it's like I can be here as well as I can do tattoos while I'm home. And, that's how I usually book things, book tattoo appointments and book, performances and speaking engagements and stuff.
Well, that's really interesting because it seems like it's a very native approach to what you're doing because you're putting your family before everything else, which is awesome.
Yeah, I just kind of felt like if I'm traveling, then if it's close enough, our whole family will drive together.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to fly and it's pretty far away, my rider has 2 plane tickets round trip. You have to pay for one of my family members to come with me. So it could be one of my daughters, or my wife. Maybe one of my friends or something like that. You know what I mean? But I try to keep it with my family, and then that's kind of how it has to be, or I don't do it because
right.
It's very important to me to keep my family around me.
Yeah.
It's something that I take a lot of pride in, and I take a lot of honor in my family, my children, my boys, my daughters.
Well, we had some more questions pop up while we were talking. I'm just going to run through them real quick because we're getting close to the 30-minute mark here. So here's another question from TY Pearl. Are you familiar with the reintegration program? Our citizens in the program need your inspiration to utilize art as expressive rehabilitation to shake the sad sickness. Are you familiar with the Creek Nation's reintegration program at all?
I'm not sure.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll send you some an email with some contact info because they have a program here at the Creek Nation government where it's like they have housing for people that are coming out of the prison system and everything, and rehabilitation program and everything. And you might get in touch with them. Maybe you could work something out with them to do a concert or something like that. I think is what T.Y. Pearl's referring to. And then
I would definitely be interested in trying to help in any way possible, for any rehabilitation for brothers or sisters getting out of
awesome.
lockup, man.
Yeah, and it's a really good program. It's won a lot of awards. T.Y. Pearl has another question here. He says, ever thought about collaborating musically with local artists from different genres like John Moreland or John Fulbright? And I'm not familiar with them, but have you ever heard of those guys?
I'm always up for any collaborations.
Okay.
I'm always up for new music from.
If these guys
got some country or rock or EDM or any of that stuff, man, I'm down, man.
How should they get in touch with you? Is this social media the best way to do it? If these guys want to.
Social media. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Sten Joddi at gmail.com if you want serious bookings or anything like that. but yeah, I mean, yeah, just get at me on any of the socials. I'm the only one. I don't have a social media manager. Okay.
Okay.
So when you're talking to me, you're really talking to me.
Awesome.
You're not talking to some computer bot or nothing.
Gotcha.
So I mean, and I might not be able to get to your message right away, but I will get to it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I will
It's on
get to
Indian time.
it. Yeah, Indian time for sure.
So we're kind of, I kind of used up all my interview time, but I did want to ask you, you know, most people that see this are going to know you from Reservation Dogs. And how did that happen? Like, how did all those connections happen that got you onto the show? And then some of the stuff that you've done on there musically is just inspired, because it's really bringing aspects of Mvskoke culture in particular that out to the mainstream that, you know, I personally would never have thought would be out there, you know. So how did that happen? We've got a couple of minutes, so go for it.
All right. First of all, shout out to Sterling Harjo and the Res Dogs crew and writers and everybody, man, because I put that on everything. Like, without them, you wouldn't even be talking to me probably right now. And a lot of people wouldn't even know who Sten Joddi is. I do want to say, you know, I'm not a pumpkin. I just play one on TV. and I definitely love all my kids, and they live in my house with me and my wife. I just want people to know that.
Yeah, it's a character. It's not a real.
It was a TV show. It's not reality. All right. Okay.
All right, that's good.
No,
And it's good that you say that, because it should be mentioned.
The pandemic happened. I got on TikTok because one of my daughters told me I should download it because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I started to do goofy videos and lip sync all these movie clips and stuff.
Uh-huh.
A few months into that, I got an email about being on Res Dogs, man. And,
Wow.
and they wanted me to audition. And so it was just the creator, man. Had
That's
nothing to do with
amazing.
me submitting any materials or nothing. They just must have seen me on YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or...
Well,
I'm
and
not
it's
sure.
like that-
Probably Mike Bone.
Yeah, I was going to say it's also that native network, you know, native connections, you know, like everybody gets pulled together into different projects or different, you know, like there's a stomp dance somewhere, you got to get to it, you know, how do I get there type of deal. So, well, it's great.
It's crazy, man.
It's great
It
to,
works that way.
yeah, for sure. Well, it's great to have you on the program. Is there anything that maybe you want to talk about, you want to mention before we get out of here that we haven't talked about? A shout out you want to give somebody or anything like that?
You know, I just want all those kids, man, that may not feel like, you know, anybody understands you, or you might feel alone, or you might feel like you know, you just hold on, man. Just hold on, stay strong. Don't give up on whatever you're dreaming of doing, because it is possible. I wouldn't believe it until it happened to me, and I want you to know that it's real. And you can be from the res, you can be from the city, you can be from wherever you want to be. It doesn't matter, and you can succeed. And you know, there's natives out here representing now.
Yes.
And so, you know, the OGs like Wes Studi and Graham Greene and all those OGs that did it before us, man, they kicked in the door, so now that we can tell our stories the way it is, and we're finally being able to do it. And I just want you to know that the world is there for you to take it, so make sure you take it, and, you know, make sure you go out there and be the best whatever you want to be. And I want you to just know that you can.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. I do want to ask you one more question before we get out of here. What's next?
I don't know, man. I'm just creating music, and I'm waiting for opportunities. You know, and that's all I'm kind of doing, man. I'm just kind of living my life and paying these bills and continuing to, you know, try to be the best dad I can be, and work out every day, eat healthy, you know, try not to have too many McDonald's cheeseburgers or too many fried breads.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
I try not to, but you know, yeah, just trying to live healthy, man. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, if anything comes up, hit us up. We'd love to have you back on the program anytime. It's been a pleasure, sir. And
Yes,
for all you viewers out there that are watching, we're going to have another live stream later this month. It's going to be like a Christmas live stream. We haven't figured out what day we're going to do it on, but I can tell you that we're going to have the new Spam Figgy Pudding limited edition Spam flavor. We're going to be doing a taste test and probably going to be giving away some cans of Spam through the live stream is what I want to try to do. So if you want to get the new...
You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Madot.